Mesdames et messieurs,
The greatest festival of our contemporary society, the Olympic Games, is about to begin.
this is gonna be close.
Oh! They're all completely gassed! They've given it everything on the global bucket! Oh, yeah! Go! Oh!
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But that is an Olympic championship.
Ready?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. I am your host, Jill Jaracz, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello, how are you?
Did I blind you with my beauty for a second there? I'm still all sparkly from the World Championship, so maybe that's what did it.
Speaking of sparkly, I was randomly on X because I don't spend a whole lot of time on there anymore, even though we are at Flame Alive Pod on X if you choose to follow us there. And if you interact with me, I'll go on a little more often. But I did notice that the ISU had figure skating awards pictures up, and you had talked about Olivia Smart and Tim Deek's costume for their program, their Dune program.
And the costume won Best Costume, designed by Madison Chalk and Mathieu Caron, who had the exhibit that I'm putting together a video of.
That's right.
So this is not a surprise, and that costume was super impressive. It had a hood. It had just this really interesting fabric. They really did look like sand on the ice.
Interesting, because it was completely different.
Yes.
I was impressed that Madison Chalk is getting in on the costume game. Good for her. 2, in the pictures, I totally could see what you were saying about it looks better on the ice.
Yes.
In the pictures, it's a little flat. It does remind me some of Charlie White and Meryl Davis's costumes as well, because they really went in on interpreting the music through their costumes too.
The one thing about that costume, though, in person, her skin, hair, and costume are kind of all the same color,
Wow.
which worked great for the program because then she sort of had almost a creature quality like the sandworms, if you know the Dune story.
Oh, cool.
So it was, but goodness, if you haven't seen that program, the costume is the least of it.
On my list. Also on my list is looking at our Substack for this week, because I am excited you are doing a deep dive on the costume stuff.
And it's taken a while, so I apologize. It is going to be a day later than usual because just trying to get all the pictures, because I want to make sure that you get all the pictures. I am doing a deep dive on the rhythm dance costumes, speaking of ice dance, and going to have a ton of pictures that ISU was kind enough to share with us. But yeah, so that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be able to do things with the newsletter that we can't do on the show because it's not a visual medium.
Right. If you are on Substack, you can find our newsletter there. We have moved our newsletter to the Substack platform. You can get the posts via email on the Substack website or via the Substack app. Our newsletter is still free, so be sure to sign up for it. You'll get Alison's excellent articles every week, and they shed more light onto our weekly episode topics. So you can sign up at flamealivepod.com, go down to the bottom to the newsletter sign up, or find us on Substack at flamealivepod.substack.com. Okay. A little long in coming for us to weigh in on the new IOC president, but we have a new IOC president for the next 8 years.
Get used to saying Madam President.
At the 144th IOC session in Costa Navarino, Greece, membership elected Kirsty Coventry as the 10th president of the International Olympic Committee, its 4th athlete president, and the first female to lead the organization. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Kekov.
It'll come, just
I
like
know.
T-Bach just sort of developed. You
Yeah.
can't force these kind of nickname things.
I know, I kind of like Keiko, but that also reminds me of like a Japanese name or something. I don't know.
Wasn't there the name of some talking ape that was like Keiko?
I don't know. If listeners, if you know, help us out. But we're doing a deep dive into Kirsty Coventry and her background and some things she's done on the IOC already to try to figure out what type of president she'll be over the next 8 years. So I spent a lot of time looking at Kirsty's life.
Yeah, you did. I've seen your notes.
Kirsty Coventry was born in 1983 in Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe. So at the time she was born, Zimbabwe is about 8.5 million people. So now it's about 17 million people. Pretty small country still in terms of population. Her parents owned a chemicals company in suburban Newlands. They had a comfortable living, comfortable enough to own a pool, but Kirsty grew up saying she knew she was privileged and lucky to have what she had, but she wasn't super rich. So traveling around to other countries and doing a lot of sporting things in other countries the way some other people could, not in the Coventry budget. She does come from a sporting family. Her grandfather was chairman of the swimming board, and her parents were also avid swimmers. Her uncles swam and boxed for Rhodesia. Now, Rhodesia, we're going to talk a little bit about Rhodesia for a little minute. That's going to give some context to the situation that she grew up in. So Rhodesia is what Zimbabwe was called when it was a British colony. Its colonial and white rule started in 1893 of the land. Whites made up about 7% of the population, but they did run the country, much like South Africa and other colonial regimes. In 1965, we're post-World War II, and this is when a lot of African nations are going through decolonization. And Prime Minister Ian Smith, who was a white man, went rogue and declared independence from the UK without getting British parliamentary authorization.
Sounds like our kind of guy.
Well, in a way, he does keep minority white rule in place, which means Black people are really discriminated against, and the majority of the people in the country are just mired in poverty.
Okay, definitely not our kind of guy.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. But I do love when anyone just goes rogue. Not the greatest, but it is always fun when you're like, hey. So Britain said that move was illegal, and that sparked a lot of international outrage, economic sanctions, and for athletes, no Olympics. So Rhodesia had competed at Amsterdam 1928, and they competed at Tokyo 1964, but they were not allowed to go to Mexico City 1968. The IOC did not recognize an independent Rhodesia, and the UN had asked countries to not recognize Rhodesian passports. So Mexico City said, okay, you're not coming. In 1971, IOC membership ruled that Rhodesia could compete at Munich 1972, but they had to use British uniforms, compete under the Union Jack, and use God Save the Queen for an anthem.
How'd that go?
Don't know, because in 1972, African nations threatened to boycott if Rhodesia was there. So this caused all sorts of drama at the IOC session ahead of the games, and membership voted 36-31 to rescind Rhodesia's invitation 2 days before the start of Munich 1972.
Didn't go so well.
No. So could Rhodesia get back into the IOC's good graces? It would take a while. In 1975, an IOC contingent went to Rhodesia to inspect its sporting facilities and organizations. And what they found led them to expel the Rhodesian Olympic Committee by a 41-26 vote.
So this sounds very similar to the history of South Africa and the Olympic movement.
In a way.
Yeah, that we have very similar situations with post-colonial discrimination. Not that colonial was so great, but particularly in a very public and brutal way.
Yes. And so in the meantime, civil war is going on in the country, and it's not going to end until 1980, when the white-led government was stymied by recession and sanctions and the toll of war. So that led to the birth of Zimbabwe as an independent nation. And they were born through an agreement that allowed majority rule. So now we're going to ouster the white government, majority rule, and hopefully we'll get some more economic parity between races. Robert Mugabe wins the country's first elections, Zimbabwe's allowed back into the games just in time for 1980 Moscow. That is where the women's hockey team won gold. Remember, because they were...
that's right, because there were all those countries that didn't go, and then Zimbabwe just sort of stumbled in to the... Oh, yes.
Yeah, they get back into the Olympics. They get golden glory. And then the country has competed in every summer game since then. And they also had a skier at Sochi 2014. So let's go back to Kirsty Coventry and her
So
family.
she's born right after they're welcomed back in. I mean, this is the world that she's growing up in.
Right. And she's also growing up in a newly independent nation, one that has majority race rule. And as a white woman from a white family, it's a tough time for her family. So after minority rule ended, there's an exodus of white people leaving the country. Kirsty's parents did not go. They had a company. They wanted to stay. So she's in this massive time of transition. Needless to say, she seemed to grow up okay. Mom taught her how to swim at age 2. And at age 6, she asked to join a swim club. And the cool thing about this, her parents seemed very even-keeled about the whole situation. They said, okay, you can join a club because we want you to make friends and have fun. And Kirsty ended up having a competitive streak, so she hated to lose. And when she hated to lose, she put more effort into her training because she didn't want to lose.
She saw the connection.
Yes. But the nice thing is her parents made sure she was a gracious loser if she won. So they instilled that into her. They also were firm believers in coach got to coach. And coach was like, parents got to parent. So if Kirsty needed parenting, coach would send her over to parents, and the parents would send her over to coach for pretty much anything swimming related. So there was none of that overstepping boundaries, which was seen to be a really good thing in her development. What Kirsty didn't know was how bad she had it as a swimmer in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe at the time, swimming was a white person's sport. And the team eventually went on tour in South Africa and Europe. And that was the first time Kirsty experienced a real pool.
A real pool?
So what were pools in Zimbabwe like? They only had outdoor pools, no indoor pools. None of them were heated, so they could not swim 4 months out of the year because it was too cold. The kids would often have to check the pool for frogs and frog eggs before practice. You're not dealing with the best facilities in Zimbabwe. But Kirsty saw these other pools and she's like, I would like to swim better so that I can go swim in nice pools. And she said that seeing how the other half lived and being from Zimbabwe helped her learn how to focus on solutions and not problems and become a goal-oriented person, which I thought was really interesting that's how you choose your mindset to be. At 8 or 9, Kirsty told her parents she was going to win a gold medal at the Olympics. So this may have been about 1992, Barcelona. Zimbabwe sent 19 people to the games, including 4 swimmers. But the best any swimmer finished was 38th. So she probably didn't even see anybody on TV. Maybe, but maybe not. So she backed up this prediction with an appearance on TV due to her successes in the pool. And her talent caught the eye of some U.S. colleges along the way, particularly Auburn University, which started recruiting her at age 16. And she's in high school at this point, going to Dominican Convent High School. Co-head coach of Auburn, Kim Bracken, reminisced with NBC Sports about Coventry when she was elected to the IOC. Coach Bracken said that Coventry was super kind, but very, very shy. And the family was very welcoming and behind her and wanted her to be in the best place. Age 17, Kirsty's still in high school, made her first Olympic team.
Not bad.
Competed at Sydney 2000 in the 50 and 100 meters freestyle, the 100 meter back, and the 200 meter IM. Her placements ranged from 13th place to 36th, but she was the first Zimbabwean swimmer ever to get into the semifinals.
And man, did she get to see some of the greats at Sydney. I mean, we're going to talk about this when we get to swimming in our Sydney 2000 episodes, but What a first games for her at such an age.
Right, right. She got an Olympic Solidarity Scholarship to help her get to Auburn, which had better coaches and training facilities and competition.
No frogs.
No frogs. And that Olympic solidarity element is going to be really important to her. And she said that she couldn't go to the games without it. She would never been able to become an Olympian without having Olympic solidarity money. Going to college was her first time in the United States. Interesting that I wonder what she thought of Alabama at the time. Being from Zimbabwe and going to Alabama.
Oh, don't ask me that question.
It was also her first time really swimming with a team in a team atmosphere. And apparently they didn't have team-on-team competition the same way in Zimbabwe. So she learned a lot about teamwork at Auburn. One of the big stories that came out was she was a backstroker. The team didn't need another backstroker, but they did need somebody to swim the 400 IM for the national title, for the team national title. And she didn't want to. She eventually relented. Her performance in that race helped Auburn win the title, and she learned a life lesson with the realization that what the team was trying to achieve was more important than individual goals. And ironically, the 400 IM became one of her best events. So while at Auburn, the team had 3 national championships. Coventry had 7 national titles, 25 All-American honors, and was named SEC Swimmer of the Year. And she also competed at the 2002 Commonwealth Games. She won gold there. And after she won the medal, of course, she's getting a lot of press, and she was pressured to comment on the increasingly difficult racial tensions going on in Zimbabwe at the time. And all Kirsty would say was that her parents and sister were going through some hard times. And for white people, times were very tough, and the government was fueling a lot of anti-white racism that was rearing its ugly head. White people and British supporters were enduring racial insults, threats, extortion, rape, and torture and murder. So even with all that going on, and that's probably stress, underlying stress in the background, Kirsty said she was very proud to be a Zimbabwean standing atop the podium and getting to hear her national anthem, which was really interesting. And not everybody felt the same way. So other athletes in Zimbabwe were pressuring Coventry to protest, namely cricket players Henry Ulonga and Andrew Flower. They wore black armbands on the field of play during the 2003 Cricket World Cup to protest against President Mugabe. They wanted Coventry to do the same thing, but she opted not to because she said that if she had protested, she might not get to continue to swim, which is what she loved doing. And it turns out that the other two fled the country after they protested.
Oh, there's a shocker.
Yeah. So she made the choice to use her swimming to bring attention to the country and give a different perspective. And she thought that brought the same results as a field of play protest would bring, which is an interesting perspective. Does it? Don't know.
And spoiler alert, we're going to keep hearing this issue
Yeah,
for the rest
yeah,
of your
right.
story, right?
So 2 years later, she goes to Athens 2004, brought home the first individual medals in Zimbabwe's history. You love these, full sets.
I do love a set.
Gold in the 200-meter backstroke, silver in the 100-meter backstroke, which she lost to USA's Natalie Coughlin. So that can put you into what time frame we're in. And then bronze in the 200-meter IM behind Ukraine's Yana Klochkova and American Amanda Beard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
These are fun names to hear again.
Right. Who was not in the audience to watch her achievements? The Zimbabwean Minister of Sport, who was banned from traveling in Europe at the time as part of sanctions against President Robert Mugabe, who was proving to be a corrupt anti-white dictator who brought Zimbabwe into economic ruin.
Oopsies.
Yeah. So Coventry comes home to a massive celebration with thousands of Black Zimbabweans cheering for her, which is kind of a big deal when you're talking about the tensions and the racial tensions that are going on at the time. There were also traditional dancers, tribal drummers, and a presidential motorcade on a 2-hour live TV broadcast. President Mugabe gave her $50,000 in, quote, pocket money, and a diplomatic passport for life.
That's a big pocket.
It's a big pocket. Craig Lord, writing for Swimming World, said Mugabe also had some faint praise for her at her homecoming parade and State House reception, saying Coventry represented, quotes, efforts underlining some degree of discipline, efforts that produce some habits, end quote.
Thanks, Bobby.
So with all of the attention on her, one might think that Kirsty would have some thoughts about the political situation in the country, but she said at the parade, quote, I think every country goes through good years and bad years. I hope this, meaning her success, gives Zimbabwe hope and that they can take something good out of it. All sportsmen and women can take inspiration from it and know that they too can follow their dreams, end quote.
Put a pin in that. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. So now we have talk about her being used as a political pawn. Not the first time this is going to happen, but she's still not going to say anything that's going to put her family into harm or herself. And we got to remember that she's 21 years old at the time. And personally, I think we put a lot on. There are athletes who want to use their platform to speak out, and there are athletes that don't. And I think that there's some kind of expectation that because you have a platform, you must speak about something. And I'm not sure that's the case. And for Coventry, it's really what she's not saying is a big deal. She did say at the time about her big celebration that it was very, very overwhelming. I felt so much pride seeing how much it meant to so many people. It really brought tears. It really brought tears to my eyes. There were no political issues. There were no racial issues. Everything was put aside for a few days so people could celebrate. It was so nice to meet so many people, all happy for the same reason. Hopefully it will carry on like that. And that's one of the things the Olympics does.
Spoiler alert again, it does not carry on like that.
No, and that's also the problem with we get that hope for the Olympics and then life goes back to usual. But you have that hope for a few days and somebody, you reach somebody or a few people and push them to make change. Coventry's medal haul also inspired the nation's new parents to pay tribute to her.
Oh, how many Kirstys are there?
Pretty quickly, we had new babies, Kirsty Coventry-Maparisa and Kirsty Coventry-Kavamba. Other Coventry and swimming-inspired baby names of that year included 3 medals Chinotimba, a swimming pool Nanga, freestyle Zuze, breaststroke Muzandam, butterfly Masocha, backstroke Banda, gold medal Zulu, gold winner Mambo, gold, silver, bronze Nedlovo, and individual medley Bofana.
What was the backstroke one again?
Backstroke Banda.
Backstroke Banda sounds like a fabulous swim-themed bar.
I saw that and thought, you will love this detail.
What not to name your child? Breaststroke.
I know. And the funny thing is that all of these people are now kind of Olympic age.
Are we going to see breaststroke Banda in the games?
I don't think so. I tried to look up a few of these, but I could not find any other references for them. So I don't know if they're swimming at all.
It'd be really sad if backstroke Banda is like a hockey player.
They were in sports, man. That'd be good. But if you can have backstrokes in hockey, I guess. If you, anyway, Kirsty goes back to Auburn. She graduated in 2006 with a bachelor's in hotel and restaurant management. She moved to Austin, Texas, to train there for Beijing 2008. At Beijing, she does even better. She qualified for 4 events, won 4 medals, a gold in the 200-meter backstroke, silvers in 100-meter back, 200 IM, and 400 IM, and is Africa's most decorated Olympian by far at this point. Zimbabwe's got like 8 medals in their history, and Kirsty's got 7 of them.
I was going to say, is it all Kirsty Coventry?
Again, she brings hope to and hopefully sheds light on a nation with a lot of problems. At this time, Mugabe is accused of fixing elections through intimidation and violence. Inflation is at 2 million%. So if you are worried about the price of eggs today in America, think about 2 million% inflation.
Yeah,
And
that's one of those situations where they talk about how the price changes from the time you pick up the item to the time you get to the cash register.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And needing bags and bags of money to just pay for anything. It was such a weird time. Unemployment is about 80%. Life expectancy is 39.73 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Country is also facing rolling blackouts at the time, except for they magically don't happen and there is electricity when Kirsty is swimming so that the whole nation can watch. So for these medals, President Mugabe called her Golden Girl and gave her $100,000 in a suitcase. Not great optics at the time, because at the time you're dealing with economic devastation. So of course there's so much backlash about her taking this money. But again, she's a white woman in dealing with this dictator now who you take the money so you don't make them angry. It's kind of interesting. I see the parallels to today in America, and in the federal government, a lot of people are losing their positions. And in the beginning of all the Doge stuff, they had the option of taking a buyout. So there were people who decided, I'm not doing this. I'm going to take the buyout and protest what the government is doing. Other people doubled down and said, I'm staying with the government and doing what I can to prove that civil servants are good workers. And I think either answer is correct for your situation. And I think Kirsty was facing similar things, a similar situation. I wouldn't say exactly parallel, but you're making choices about how you're going to act in a society where no matter what you choose, I think you're going to get backlash, either from the media and people or from the government, and which is going to harm you more.
I remember Katarina Witt, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, faced very similar scrutiny because she was seen as very close to the East German regime prior to the reunification of Germany. And I think I know a lot of Romanian athletes had that same issue in that time period where it's not just it was a communist regime, it was a really brutal dictatorship. And how do you navigate that when you are a star and you need the government to let you out of the country? But do how do you balance that? What's good for me? What's good for the rest of the world? What's good for my family? What's good for the rest of the people? And it's very easy for us to say, you should have done this, you should have done that. But until you're there, you don't know what you would do. You can sit there and say very quickly, oh, I would never, let Mugabe give me money when everyone else is starving. Talk to me when you've given that choice.
Right, right. And of course, you're also not living permanently in the country. So how do what perception is there of that too? I don't know. I mean, she would spend quality time at home. There was something I read about her when she was training for Beijing, and her coach was not thrilled about her like spending all of December at home because she was going to have pool access, but it wasn't
But
going to be
that pool
great.
had frogs.
Yeah, yeah. So she had a lot of dry land workouts there, and they were like, "Well, we hope this works." And just the balance of her being Zimbabwean and being Zimbabwean in her country and being Zimbabwean, but a resident somewhere else.
Don't worry, people who are anti Kirsty Coventry. We'll get to that.
So, Beijing 2008 is peak Coventry, but she's continues to compete. Luckily, even though in 2009, Zimbabwe's cricket team was banned from touring England in protest of Mugabe's regime, Zimbabwe was still allowed to compete at London 2012 because that turned out to be kind of a story item and a kind of a big deal, but turned out to be okay for her. She was the country's flag bearer for the opening ceremonies, but did not place higher than 6th in that games. Ahead of London, she got injured and spent most of 2010 away from the pool, and that hurt her competitions. Well, during these games, like all of them, they have elections for the Athletes Commission, the IOC Athletes Commission. She got elected, along with one Tony Estanguet. Other fun fact from her time at London, she got engaged to her boyfriend and manager, Tyrone Seward. They got married in 2013. According to All Africa, her lobola, or bride price, was 1 cow and 2 chickens. No cash. I know it sounds bad. This bride price thing sounds bad, but Kirsty wanted a traditional wedding, and she told the Herald, which out of Zimbabwe or African area, that Lobola was a centuries-old Southern African tradition where a man can prove to a bride's family that he can support the bride. It also unites the families and ensures they'll get to see each other at least once a year.
There are all kinds of sexist traditions around weddings. I mean, let's
Yeah.
not harp too much on the bride price. And it doesn't sound, I mean, what was it? 1 cow, 2 chickens?
Yeah. Not
It's
bad.
not bad. I hope I'm worth at least 2 chickens. And you know what? With the price of eggs right now.
So Kirsty told the press in 2012 that was her last games.
She
Except
lied.
in 2014, she decided to return. She qualified for Rio at age 32. She's flag bearer again. She competed in just 2 backstroke events, placed 11th in the 100 meter and 6th in the 200 meter. She retired, leaving the sport still loving it, which was very important to her. And according to NBC, it was this year that she confided in Coach Kim Bracken that she wanted to be IOC president one day and help grow the organization. So I think those seeds came pretty early on comparatively, because she's not yet president of the Athletes Commission, but she's involved in the Athletes Commission pretty heavily.
I mean, just the fact that she joins the Athletes Commission in 2013 is when the tenure actually begins, even though the election is in 2012. It's 2025. She is 41 years old, and she's the president. I mean, let's not diminish the ambition on this woman and the single-minded goal to get that far that fast.
Mm-hmm. In a world where many of the senior leaders don't want to step down.
Right. Allowing the youngsters a seat at the table is not how the IOC does things.
Right. Well, a lot of places don't do things that.
Absolutely. The IOC is not unique in being an old boys club.
So by the time she retires from swimming, she's already really deep into working with the IOC. She was elected chair of the Athletes Commission in 2018. That gave her a seat on the IOC executive board, which she held until 2021. Once this term was over, she stepped down from the Athletes Commission, was elected as a regular member of the IOC, and then re-elected to the executive board in 2023. So she's had a fair amount of high-level experience as a member of the IOC. On the Athletes Commission, she played a significant role in developing the Commission's new strategy, which was to empower athlete participation in the Olympic movement decision-making process and support athletes' development in their sporting and non-sporting careers. So we've seen this before where like Athletes 365 comes into play, and there's a lot more of what are you doing post-athletic career things going on that's been developed. During this time, the Athletes Commission also worked on the medal reallocation process and how if you got reallocated, you suddenly became a medal winner for an Olympics that took place 12 years ago, what kinds of ceremonies you could have and what they could choose to have for their ceremony. Another initiative she worked on was developing the guidelines for athlete protests at Tokyo 2020.
She's a traditionalist.
Yes. Well, and that also kind of stems back to her being pressured to protest on the field of play.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting parallel of these seeds that are planted early in her life. They start working on it. And they did a lot of work on the athlete protest movement. She did a lot of polling of athletes. I think that the Athletes Commission, during her time that she has been on it, not necessarily all her leadership, but they have worked very hard to give athletes a bigger and bigger voice and make sure that they get included a lot. Because I remember that protest situation where they got thousands of responses to surveys and questionnaires and really interpreted what the athletes wanted to see.
You know, I think this is one of those times very much where American athletes and the rest of the world have a very different view of the situation. Because I remember a lot of American athletes coming out before Tokyo being very upset with the results of that commission's work. And they show the results of the survey, and the survey is saying, okay, but guess what, Americans? There's 200 other countries that are coming to this little party, and you are not the only ones. And even though Kirsty Coventry is an athlete, she's not American. And American athletes and American IOC needs to get their head in this game that says, you don't run this.
Yeah. And she's an athlete from a small country. So she's really looking out for small countries and making sure they have a voice. On the sidelines, Coventry's also starting her own swim academy in Harare. And then her sports administration career gets a little funky because there's a lot going on.
Oh, we're using the word funky. I was wondering if we were going to get to this because I don't want it to make it sound like we are Kirsty Coventry apologists.
Yeah, no, there's some funky stuff going on. So she's a member of the WADA Foundation Board and athlete rep on the International Testing Agency. She becomes a VP of the International Surfing Association in 2016, convenient for Tokyo 2020, and was a consultant for the Zimbabwe Olympic Committee. In 2017-ish, she was elected to be a VP of the Zimbabwe Olympic Committee in a landslide election. So she got 38 out of 42 votes for that. And then in September 2018, new president Emerson Mnangagwa appointed Coventry as Minister for Sports, Art, and Recreation, a cabinet-level position. And according to The Guardian, Kirsty found out about her appointment the same time everybody else did. Which I don't know what to believe there, to be quite honest.
Yeah, this is the part of Kirsty Coventry's career where things get really murky in terms of her connection with the Zimbabwean regime. And you will hear some real conflicting stories as to where she stands.
Yeah, she is the only white person on his 23-member cabinet. And she may not have had a choice to take the job. If you want to be diplomatic about it, again, it's, I'm appointing you and you can't say no. You can't say no because new president, not much different than the old president. We're going to be basic. He's got some bad human rights records, but instead she opts to focus on her ministry, supposedly. Again, do you stick with a regime that is got a lot of human rights issues to try to make change? Or do you, in a form of protest, say, no, I'm not working with you?
This is the point where Coventry and I diverge.
Oh, really? You would have said no.
Well, this is the part where I no longer say to her what I said before, where she was an athlete, her family still lived in the country. She didn't have a lot of choices.
Here she's got a choice.
Here she's got multiple choices. She has the financial resources. She has support of powerful people. This is where Coventry and I have a problem.
Okay. Told The Guardian in 2025 ahead of the IOC election, this role was not something I ever considered doing, and I didn't even know I was being considered for the role, but I went with it. And she also has a philosophy that you can't create change if you don't have a seat at the table, which is true, I think. But again, what do you do? And I'm going to sound like a Coventry apologist, but I don't know what I would have done in her situation because I don't know what her home life is like at this point, and I don't know what her family would have faced at this point. So she's gotten a lot of criticism for the role, particularly for being part of this government and being complicit with this administration. Some big elements. In 2020, there was an opposition movement petitioning the IOC to revoke her membership over a Mugabe stolen farm that the president allocated to her, which is a situation I couldn't get into very much in understanding. It's a racial thing. So back in the day,
complicated.
It is complicated because white people stole black people's farms. And then Mugabe stole them back, and then he decided to give one to Coventry. So do you take it? Yes or no? I don't know if I would, but can you say no? Or do you just go, okay, someday this has got to get better, or someday I can really say what I'm thinking? We don't really get the impression that she's ever really said what she thought.
Coventry strikes me, and this is totally opinion, in terms of the fact that she has risen so far so fast. She is, one, extremely ambitious, extremely clever, and I don't mean that in a she's a gamesman.
Mm-hmm.
She is playing chess at all times.
And figured out who to align with.
Which, I would probably say the same thing about Thomas Bach.
Mm-hmm. Or anyone, really.
Right. Anyone who would rise to that position, but not in the same way that I would think of, say, a Juan Antonio Samaranch.
Really?
Yes, he strikes me, and of course, this is just as I don't know, more brutal, like a little more like I am just going to take what's mine. Whereas as Bach and Coventry, I feel like they played the game.
I wonder if they had to play the game.
Different eras.
Yeah, different era because of being an athlete. And membership was fewer athletes. If you've got a whole bunch of rich people in royalty who, this is my club, I don't want to let athletes in, especially now that they're pro.
And
Maybe not.
women. God. Ew, cooties.
But yeah, it's a total mindset shift because you're dealing with an organization built on a ton of wealth. So back to what Coventry's doing or not, and in her ministry. So in 2022, the Zimbabwe Sports and Rec Commission suspended the country's national football board amid allegations of fraud and sexual harassment of female refs by technical staff. That led to an 18-month FIFA ban, which, of course, in any football crazy country, you're furious about this and you've hurt the athletes. But Coventry has said that she heard some pretty horrific stories about what was going on. And she said that they were making progress, that helped them make progress. So again, it's a bad thing. It's some pain, but does that did we have to get to the stage where you needed massive amounts of pain to cause change? Apparently.
Boxing.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Their governance is now on track, but Zimbabwe can't host international matches because their stadiums aren't up to international requirements, which is another Coventry responsibility. And she's taken a lot of heat for this too, and has said you're not investing in sporting facilities like you're supposed to. Meanwhile, we have this ban on athletes that is preventing them from making a living, and you're not holding up your end of the bargain. She's also been accused of letting the swimming infrastructure fall apart, including at the big Olympic aquatic complex outside Harare.
Frogs.
Yeah, right. The National Sports Stadium is being renovated. So in mid-March of this year, she toured it and has said money is slow to come. That's a problem. They're making progress. There were some unexpected challenges with the renovations, kind of like they dug up some pipes and went, ooh, we found a situation here. But some
frogs.
Not frogs, not a different kind of plague, I guess. But they're making some progress. Like seats were going in, entrance gates were happening. They found out they didn't have to renovate as much of the pitch as they thought they would have to do. She also said, like, do we wish it would happen faster? Yeah. But that the tone that she had, and this was on a news outlet's Instagram feed, the tone that she had was like, you understand that there's a lot of issues with budget and money releasing in our country, don't you? Kind of thing. So I can see where you've got issues with stadiums. Please make something happen. And I also see where a hand could be tied on who's going to release the money and who's got the purse strings, really. Within the IOC, as athletes clamor for equal revenue distribution, she has defended the Olympic Solidarity Program. Because remember, the athletes have been going, hey, give all of us some coin. We all deserve it. She has said that without Olympic solidarity, that would be detrimental to a lot of athletes without financial means. And, producer Ben posted an interesting financial means situation on the Facebook group about a British athlete who is balking at registration fees they have to pay to go to a championships, and should sports be for elites only, who can pay for it, the people who can pay for it.
Avery Brundage.
Right. Right. She has worked to strengthen the network of athletes commissions around the world and get a stronger voice for athletes within the movement. She seems to be behind the drive to help athletes in their non-sporting careers. She championed the Athletes Declaration initiative that passed and was adopted into the Olympic Charter. That's got 12 rights and 10 responsibilities, not universally loved within the sporting community. She was also in on initiatives like that Airbnb deal with athlete travel grants and Olympic experiences. But according to Inside the Games, we're at old Inside the Games, so
we can trust it.
Yeah. She's also said that ending Russia's Olympic ban after Pyeongchang was fair because the neutral team was cleaner than anyone else, although 2 Russians did test positive. She has been pretty vocal in trying to find a solution for Russian doping and getting people to the table to talk, which makes you think you have to wonder if this attitude is going to help Russia get back into the Olympic graces again quickly, even if they're still at war with Ukraine, which is a violation of the Olympic Charter. Couldn't get a read on that. But I think there's that concern out there that she's a little cozy with Russia. As with many IOC members, she's on a number of committees. And, like we noticed, the women have to be on more so that they can reach their TBOC requested gender parity or whatever he was looking for, more female representation. She's chairing the Coordination Commission for the Youth Olympic Games that will be in Dakar, Senegal next year.
Which actually makes sense.
Yes,
it's the first of any Olympic event in Africa.
We'll see how well they're going to do because they have had their own budget troubles. I don't think
that's a lot of troubles.
That's not Coventry's fault, but it's an African thing because I think also when you have now an African IOC member, instantly people start thinking, well, the games will go to Africa at some point. Senegal will be a test of how much can they do. Because also, FIFA went to South Africa. That's been a long time. What, like a decade now?
Oh, I wouldn't even know, but they did do Saudi Arabia as well, right?
Yeah, but South Africa was a big deal because it was the first time they were in Africa. That also not so good. So are we going to learn from Rio 2016, which you were at, Kirsty, and probably got an earful from athletes over things not being so good? Don't know.
Green pool water. Oh, diving tank. The green diving tank. Hey, maybe it was the frogs.
Just swim through it. And
I am never letting go of this frogs now that you've told me this.
She chairs the Coordination Commission for Brisbane 2032. And we're going to get into this when we talk about those games later on in this show. But there's a lot of building going on for these games. So we are already doing what the IOC didn't intend, or what TBOC did not want when he created Agenda 2020 and Agenda 2020 plus 5.
I still will never forgive TBOC for the name of that agenda.
So that's not going to be good. That I think could be a backsliding. And that's going on under her leadership and not being able to put the pressure on and say, hey, the IOC really does not want this. And I think we see that also with Milan. The IOC said, no, we don't need a track. And Milan made one happen. We'll talk about that too. Speculation on whether she could become IOC president has been going on since like 2019. So this is not a new thing that she is where she is. In her candidate files, let's look at those real quick. Coventry said it's time to reevaluate the organization and get rid of inefficiencies and redundancies. So we're going to do an overhaul, organizational restructuring. She wants to drive empowerment, strengthen engagement, and ensure the continued relevancy of the Olympic movement, and is driven by an Ubuntu philosophy called I am because we are. And a key part of that philosophy is lifting up others and being partners. And she does seem to be throughout her career very much come to the table. Let's talk. Let's work it out. Let's get opinions from everybody. Her candidate file is pretty basic, I will say. She talked about 5 priorities she wanted to work on. Harness the power of sport, which would prioritize athletes. And now we are 3rd athlete leader in a row So I think that is going to be a big deal. She wants to strengthen women's sport by protecting female athletes. So
Mhm.
So it seems like the IOC is going to actually take a stand where the IOC does not love doing this and put a blanket ban on trans athletes instead of passing the buck to federations, which is, what the modus operandi has been. She wants to promote equal opportunities for women, create tools and protocols to allow international federations to focus on sport delivery, tailor programs to NOCs, and expand the Olympic solidarity scholarships to help grow a worldwide audience for the Olympic movement. Because if more countries and more athletes in small countries get scholarships, those countries will hop on the Olympic train, so to speak. I find it interesting that she wants to promote equal opportunities for women when she also wants to ban trans women.
I'm going to make a lot of Catholic analogies probably in the next few minutes of the show, but we are not getting Pope Francis here. We are
No.
getting Pope Benedict.
Oh.
She is a traditionalist. I don't care that she's a woman. I don't care that she's 41. I don't care that she's from Africa. She is old school traditionalist when it comes to certain things about sport. We are not going to see the new opening up of the IOC under Coventry. This is going to be, I think Bach is going to look like transparency supreme compared to Coventry. And I think on the flip side, that's how, as a woman from Africa, she was palatable to the old boys network. Honestly, she's one of them in a skirt.
Interesting. Would you call her a pick-me girl?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think she has a lot of female friends on the IOC, but on the flip side, she does because she couldn't have gotten elected without them.
Right. I just think she knows how to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that no matter it's not that she wants to be friends with everybody. She wants to get along with everybody, and I think she wants everybody to get along. Because we need everybody in a different way I have these goals, or the organization has these goals now, or she has these goals, so I got to make friends with enough IOC members. The organization, now she's going to be leading an organization, had the organization have these goals. Okay, where are we going to get our people? And we're going to be looking at Saudi Arabia because they're hosting the E-Games for a while. And how are they going to help the movement? And she'll probably look to Africa and go, hey, you're my people. Let's do something, kind of thing.
Neville Chamberlain, not Winston Churchill.
Yes.
But to be fair, I don't think any of the candidates were Winston Churchill. I think they were all a little too Neville Chamberlain, especially the only one I think who might have stood up to Russia would have been Sebko. And he's Neville Chamberlain in a lot of other ways. So I think when it comes to Russia, we're not in a good place.
No, not really. Not really. Other priorities. She wants to maximize collaboration and engagement. So improve internal communications to have better communication with the media. Did acknowledge that that's going to open them up to criticism a lot more. You have to be okay with it. I have a feeling she has a pretty thick skin.
Absolutely.
IOC commissions will have greater influence and decision-making power, which, again, we've talked about how TBOC there's been a lot of talk lately about TBOC consolidating power and having a lot of power for himself. I don't know, but
he was the final decision maker.
Yes,
I mean, he was the arbiter. If a commission came out with something that he really didn't like, I don't think it saw the light of day.
Right. So will membership be cool with them having the same kind of input that they've had for the last couple of years? Or will that convince people to be on commissions and work more there? And that's where the decision making is going to take place. She wants to strengthen partnerships for mutual growth, keep financial partners, make sure everyone in the world can experience the game. So we're looking at a broader reach of media products and targeting younger viewers and audiences. Champion sustainable development, social impact, advance gender equity, except for the trans, inclusivity and diversity, environmental sustainability. You can't have growth for growth's sakes. So she has said, like, basically, the games are about as big as they can get. I'm not sure she's thrilled. When I read this, I'm like, oh, you must not be thrilled with all the sports that got added for LA. So she wants to explore the review of the sports program. And she wants to advance credibility and trust, have zero tolerance for corruption, doping, and unethical behavior. And the IOC must remain neutral. But, producer Brendan and I joke, political candidates are always like, I'm pro-education and I'm against crime. This kind of reads like that to me in a way.
Very much.
There's a little contradiction going on there with what she wants and what she's also said. So it's going to be interesting to see what she does. She's also a mom of 2 small children. Had one not that long ago. So it's going to be interesting to see what she does with mothers who are athletes.
And there's been a lot of progress made with mothers. Paris did a lot to make it easier to be a parent, especially a mother, and an athlete at the same time. And a lot of federations have as well. So she may I hope she takes some of those successes and brings it system-wide.
Right. I think that her being a 5-time Olympian and seeing so many games under different presidents and being in the movement as long as she has been as an athlete is a big asset to her. And I think she's going to push that athlete focus a lot.
Well, she's been an athlete in such a recent Olympics as well.
Yeah.
When T-Bog was elected, it was what?
76. He was
76. I'm trying to do the math in my head.
2013, I think he was elected.
Yes,
so,
he
yeah,
was.
It's a long
So
time.
it was a long time post athletic career. She was 2016.
Right?
We all have that in our memories. It's not a generation ago. So that makes it very significant.
I also want to talk a tiny bit about the Athletes Commission because that's a big part of how she got to be where she is. Created in 1981 by Juan Antonio Samaranch the first. And it wasn't until Lillehammer 1994 that athletes were elected. They were always appointed first. And then Kirsty's first year as an Olympian was the first time that Athletes Commission members became IOC members and that the first athlete rep joined the IOC EB. When she started in with the Olympics, there's a lot of change going on. And I think she probably saw some of that change happen. And that also drives some of this athlete first thing.
And it also may drive some of her conservatism in the sense of the need for continuity. She grew up in a very tumultuous world, her childhood in Zimbabwe. And then even in a much smaller scale, but she grew up as an athlete in kind of a tumultuous time in the Olympic movement. We have seen a lot of change in the Olympic movement in the past 25 years.
Yes.
And if you think back to what went on in 2000 and the Salt Lake City scandals coming through there, and she saw a lot of things happen where I could see her, can't we all just get along?
Yeah.
I don't have to like it, but I understand it.
So it'll be curious to see how she does and what we're going to get. I think there are signs here that we're going to see something that's going to be controversial. You've got to look like some things.
I mean, she's going to have to make an announcement, I think, within the first month, if not the first week of her actual tenure. She's going to have to make an announcement about Russia.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's got to be decided. Although a lot of federations have already said, they're not coming to Milan. So we'll see. But, you've got to make that decision for 28 pretty quickly. I also think that some of the decisions and leadership she will have, because she wants to bring all of these voices to the table, it is not going to play well in Western press.
I can't disagree.
Whether it's not a good or bad thing, but I think it's one of those trying to take that neutral stance and maintain that neutral stance and do what's best for the organization. Just like the IOC had Beijing 2022. They've been in places where Rio 2016 had a lot of corruption. Well, they just don't have the same priorities that other nations do. There are no friends and enemies in a way that any other country has.
It's it is the International Olympic Committee, right? It's not America's Olympic Committee or Russia's Olympic Committee. It is a collection of the countries of the world. So you're going to have very divergent political thoughts, needs, desires. And how do you manage all of that? And then you're going to throw in, well, she's a young woman, it's certainly young in the sense of, being a world leader. And how is that going to play out in the press? Because let's not pretend that a woman in her position is going to get flack that a man wouldn't.
Especially when so much of the sports media is still male.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting. Like we said, she's 41. She can be a member of the IOC until 2053. And let's not forget that the IOC also recently eased its term limit on presidents to allow T-Bach to run again, and he said no. So who knows how long the Kirsty Coventry reign will last. We've got it for at least 8 years.
Avery Brundage. So here's the Catholic reference I have been waiting all show to share with you. From our absolute friend of the show, TKFLASTAN, and going rogue king, IOC member Dick Pound. I was reading Ed Warner's newsletter on Substack, and he took a quote that was reported on The Independent that said, Dick Pound said that the IOC makes the Vatican conclave look like it's open house.
Oh, Dick Pound. Although, you know what? I don't really care about that. The IOC is a membership organization. They can do their elections how they want. What they are required to share with us, I mean, numbers help, but how they run their business is kind of their business. It's not, I would imagine that there's going to be some press people going, yeah, well, what they do is affecting people in different cities and countries because they have these really expensive games. Well, that's between the country and them in a way. And that's when they talk to their citizens. But how they want to elect their president, give it a rest. You boys needed more to gossip about. And that one round voting really did you in, didn't it?
It did. So Jacques Rogue and T-Bach were 2 rounds. So we haven't seen 1 round in our paying attention time. What I thought was really interesting, first woman joined the IOC in 1981.
Wow.
So not that long ago. And our friend Anita DeFrance, who we've talked about many times, was the first VP of the IOC Executive Committee in 97.
Took a long time.
But this is my favorite part. And because when we were saying before that she had to make friends with the women to get elected, when DeFrance ran for the presidency in 2001, there were 11 members who were women. That's it. When T-Bach ran, 21% were women. This time around, 43% of the voting membership were women.
Wow. And I know
T-Bach pushed for this.
Yes.
I mean, this is one of his main legacies is he more than doubled the number of women on the IOC and put them in significantly powerful positions.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think she could have been elected if that change hadn't happened.
I'm not sure either. I think the way T-Bach ran things, and yes, they got along very well and had to work together a lot. So there was a lot of, well, she was his favored candidate. Okay. He claims to not have campaigned. Okay. Don't know. But I also saw on LinkedIn that TKFLASTAN Terrence Burns helped with Juan Antonio Samaranch's campaign. So, I mean, there's stuff going on.
I mean, let's not pretend, but there was a lot going on. There's a reason Dick Pound says the Vatican conclave is a more open procedure.
Right. It's not running for school president.
Have you ever run for school president?
I ran for school, like junior high. I ran for officer somewhere.
Those get nasty. This was probably safer because at least somebody didn't hit you with a spitball. Can you imagine Princess Anne, shooting him out? She made an appearance and she was lovely. Hardest working woman on the IOC.
Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. So, yeah. Do you have any final thoughts on what you think we can see from her, or knowing more about Kirsty and her background? What has anything changed for you in your mind?
I think I'm going to be pretty mad for the next 8 years.
Ooh. Wow.
Yeah. I'm a little Avery Brundaging.
Interesting. Where do you think that she is going to Brundage it up?
I think she is certainly too conservative for my taste. I think her stance on can't we all get along is going to make me crazy. I think Russia's going to get away with high crimes and misdemeanors for the next 8 years. I think she's going to golden cage female athletes. So I'm definitely concerned.
Interesting. I'm curious. I'm not sure. Being a people pleaser growing up, of course, why can't we all get along? I am concerned that there's going to be a little bit more conservatism or hardlineism brought into the movement. But I think there's going to be some athletes who are very much discounted and removed. But I do think there's going to be more for athletes, and they're going to take more of a center stage thing, which I hope will happen in a good way. And we'll see. I want to know what listeners think. We had some conversation about this on our Facebook page. We had some people who did not think that she'd get elected. Some people thought Co would happen first. Are you surprised?
I think Co thought Co would happen.
I think a lot of media people thought Co would happen too. A lot of British media people. They were very, very shocked that he got so few votes. He only got like 8 votes comparatively. She got just enough to win with Juan Antonio Samaranch behind her. And then Co got about 8 votes. And then the others got like 1 or 2.
Yeah, a lot of prognosticators said because she got in the first vote, that's what did it. Mm-hmm. Because had it gone to a second vote and some of the others had dropped out, she might not have won subsequently. That people were putting, not protest votes, but there was a handful of votes that went to some of the smaller candidates that wanted them to have votes, but would have switched to either Co or Samaranch going forward. But Coventry pulled it off just because you need 49 votes. She got 49 votes. Somebody didn't do their math correctly, I think, is the real issue.
Right. It's kind of like when Chicago got kicked out of the 2016 bid in round 1, and there were a lot of gasps in the audience. I do think we need some kind of meme of them flipping through the binder, trying to figure out what happens next, because they were not surprised, or they were so shocked to have the voting done in one round. That was really the best part.
That he's just sitting there in front of the world, flipping pages, and the pages were covered in Post-it notes. I'm like, oh, IOC directors, they're just like us.
That was funny. People were surprised about Coventry, but listener John had a lot of thoughts, but he thinks that the storm is going to hit. Like T-Bach is leaving just in time, and Coventry's got to face a lot of battles before her first year is up. Like you said, Russia, transgender, LA, climate change, ballooning Olympic program. She's got some baggage, but he also said, who in the IOC doesn't have a skeleton in the closet?
And probably there are some people who actually have skeletons in the closet.
That could be. Talk about a conclave.
What is in those royal palaces? Buongiorno.
Buongiorno. It's time to talk about Milan-Cortina 2026. Big news for them was that the sliding track was tested.
There were sliders going down the sliding track.
The interesting thing is, if you saw these tests, the construction is nowhere near done.
They have a track.
They have a track. Yeah. And they have ice on the track. And you got to see skeleton athletes and losers and bobsledders go down. But there's no roof on the track, and it doesn't even look like all of the walling is built yet, but they have the bare minimum. Everyone is happy. The federations were very, very happy with how it looks and was performing. They also had to build the support buildings that go with it. Work is going to continue until November 5th.
Okay. We have a track.
So We will see. I don't think coagulation is totally finished. We haven't had a full decision yet, if I understand. So
No, they had. So the Milan Organizing Committee presented to the IOC, and that's still not quite.
finished.
Nobody's saying it definitively.
Yes.
Lake Placid is not off the table.
Right.
Milan would like to pretend Lake Placid is off the table.
Yes.
Yeah.
Track is 1.749 kilometers long, 16 curves, estimated top speed of 145 kilometers per hour, which for those of you in miles, that's 90. And they have run times slated for 55 to 60 seconds. The organizing committee also presented to the IOC. They've had successful test events in short track, figure skating, aerials, and moguls. 600,000 of the 1.5 million tickets have been sold. I think they're having another ticket drop soon. I got an email about this.
Oh.
Yes. April 8th, there's going to be another ticket drop. So
Okay.
if you have not gotten tickets and you would like to, sign up now. You can buy Paralympic tickets at any time. But if you are looking to go to the Olympics, tickets will be coming at you again. They're going to have early bird prices. Those will not last. Tickets are going to be released on a first come, first served basis. So we'll have a link to how to get those in the show notes.
LA presented at the IOC too.
Yeah, how's that going?
Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. So Casey Wasserman and Reynold Hoover. Reynold Hoover's the chief executive. Casey Wasserman is he the president of the organizing committee?
Potentially. He's in charge. He's like the main man in charge.
So there was a lot of questions, obviously, concerning what's happening with the wildfires, what's going on in American politics. Yeah. So the chief executive, Reynold Hoover, said, for 17 days, this is a quote, for 17 days, we can fix any problem in the world, which I think is probably the most arrogant thing that has ever been said in an IOC session. And that is saying something.
Wow. Does he remember Atlanta 1996 and the bombing?
Dear Lord. But they did emphasize that they are working with the Trump administration, state officials, local officials, that everything is hunky-dory on the political front. But there's a little thing going on. And I loved this because Ingmar DeVos, who's the head of the International Equestrian Federation, said, your president is not allowing people from certain countries into the U.S. How is that going to work?
Right. And that stuff changes minute by minute here. We're still in it's announced one day, it's rescinded the next day, it's announced the next, reapplied the following day or the following week, rescinded again. We are in a constant state of flux here of not knowing what is actually going on in this country. Makes it very hard to plan for athletes.
The official proposal from the Trump administration includes total travel bans from 11 countries, including big countries in both the Olympics and the Paralympics, like Cuba, Iran, and Venezuela, restricted visas for another 10 countries, including some big guns like Russia and Belarus, and then a 60-day vetting process from 22 countries, which would include Kirsty Coventry, Zimbabwe, and St. Lucia, who just happened to win some gold medals in Paris.
What'd they do? Why are they being targeted?
There were several nations, several Caribbean island nations that were targeted in that 60-day vetting process. So Wasserman just kept saying, no, Trump supports the games. And Coventry said, of course, all the athletes will be getting visas. But the IOC membership was not buying it in this LA presentation. So
yeah, because so many athletes get selected for the games weeks.
Less than 60 days.
Yes. So what are you going to do? Especially if you've got an administration that is banning stuff willy-nilly, so to speak.
And it's hard. I mean, in this country, we've talked to many athletes who are in that that U.S. Army program that supports athletes. Lots of these countries do the same thing. So if you're in the military of Venezuela, are you automatically not going to make it through vetting?
Boy.
Yeah.
This is going to be not fun to deal with. And I would not be surprised, considering what's going on, even with Canada, and the tariff situation that's happening and the breakdown of diplomatic relations, if there's a massive boycott. I would not be surprised. I'm not saying there will be, and I'm not going to ask any country to start thinking about that, but I would not be surprised if in 2 years we have a much different world.
You know what? Considering we have a much different world in 2 months, 28 is a long way off in this political situation, and heartbreaking on so many levels that this is where we are. On the upside, the organizing committee for LA said that they're feeling momentum from Paris 2024, and they are expected to reach their sponsorship goals. They're saying $2 billion by the end of the year.
Wow, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. And then the city approved the plan of moving things out of the city, moving things into the city in terms of the venues. We won't get the full picture until April 9th. That seems to be when we're going to get some more announcements concerning the venue plan. So I got all concerned about this, but it's actually nothing new if you saw this press release, because we had a conversation and I was panicking that they had moved swimming out of SoFi. And then you're like, no, sweetie, SoFi's in Inglewood. So you'll see a lot of things about the LA venue plan. Don't worry about them until next week.
Right.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
So French Alps 2030, which is the stupidest name so far. They need to do better of a location. They actually have an OCOG now. They reported to the IOC session. So the president is going to be Edgar Grosperon. He's a 3-time Olympian and the 92 gold medalist in freestyle moguls. Their main principles are going to be sporting success, the hospitality of the French Alp territories, and a sustainable legacy. We're going to see a venue master plan, which could be really interesting because they're talking spreading these things out even more than Milan-Cortina. We'll see that in June. Their report was heavy on glitz, very low on substance.
Videos do wonderful things.
Speaking of venue plans, holy moly cannoli, Brisbane 2032 came out with a doozy of an update.
Lay it on us.
Okay, so this is my favorite part of this thing. So David Crisafulli, who is the Premier of Queensland, campaigned all fall on no new stadium. Guess what he just approved?
New stadiums?
A new stadium. So here's the big headlines. 7.1 billion Australian dollar construction cost, which is about 4.4 billion US. We're going to have 3 athlete villages, 37 venues between Cairn and the Gold Coast, which is 1,100 miles. For those in the US, we're going to have venues from New York to Tampa.
Okay.
And we're not just talking soccer being spread out. We're talking lots of venues in different places. Hence, 3 athlete villages.
In a way, though, again, we have how much of the games do you want it to be in a city? How much will fans enjoy the opportunity to not see stuff? I mean, people going to Milan-Cortina are making serious choices about what they can and cannot see, and they are diehard Olympics fans who want to fit in all the sports they can. So here you're either going to have to bop around between clusters, or say we're not going to a couple of clusters.
We've talked a lot about the GABA. The GABA is going to be used, but then demolished after the games.
Interesting. So are they going to put money into fixing it up? Because that was a big deal.
Not really.
Okay, well,
Some, but
good. I mean, that would be worse to have say, oh, we need to spend like 50 million to bring this site up to games level and then basically crash it all down.
Right. So they took out the Brisbane arena as well because that needed 2.5 billion Australian dollars in refurbishment. So they said, we're not going to spend it on that. We're just going to build a whole new stadium instead. My favorite part of this whole program is that the site for canoe and paracanoe has saltwater crocodiles. Like that's what that stretch of the Fitzroy River is known for.
That is making like comedy, late night comedy show stories here.
Gold.
Yeah. I mean, okay, not great to have crocodiles around. Well, we don't know how they're going to be. Wait, and what didn't they say? Oh, we go surfing where there's sharks. So it's
Yes.
okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Don't know if it's going to be a bigger deal than like, will there be any crocodiles at all? Will this be another Zika and it's just something to make fun of? Or is it an actual problem? Interesting that they've decided we're going to spend over twice as much to build a new arena versus fix an arena.
Well, that construction cost is all the construction.
Oh, okay.
That's
okay.
not just for the single
Okay,
stadium, because
okay.
we've got other new builds besides Brisbane Stadium. We've got a new National Aquatic Center, a new Whitewater Center, a couple of new indoor sports center, a Parasport Center, which is going to be significant. There is a small sports center there now, but they're going to expand that all to be the center for and training center for parasports. And we're going to throw in a new football stadium in Cairn.
Wow.
Then you've got construction that might as well be new builds. Like at the Brisbane Tennis Center, we're going to have a new center court and 12 new outside courts.
That is a total new.
It's a rebuild. Brisbane Showgrounds, Sunshine Coast Stadium, the Hockey Center, a couple other stadiums, RNA Showgrounds. We're just going to put the village there and put some training stuff there.
Okay.
So much new build in this venue plan. It is out of control. This felt like Barcelona 92 when I was reading through this venue plan. And then you look at LA that's trying very hard to have zero new construction. Of course, we're bending the rules when it comes to temporary stadiums, but they ain't building SoFi again.
Right. And I get that maybe some of this stuff will be beneficial to the area afterwards. I can see where Australia and an aquatic center would be a good thing. Whitewater Center? There's
only one in the country, so they want to have a second one because the country's big.
Okay. I get that. We have the chicken and the egg. You get the Olympics, so that's impetus to develop and invest in sports facilities. But at the same time, oh my gosh, doing it all at once is it's such a sticker shock.
And let's start taking bets on what $7 billion is going to be when we're done.
Ooh, it's going to be
16.
Oh, you're saying I was going to say 13.2 because my brain actually went to double that. But yeah, it's going to be at least double.
Yeah.
Okay. For the record, I've got it. I'll say 14 and you've got 16.
Yep.
I think you're going to win. And we still got other stadiums who are upgrading too. I mean, that's
right.
it.
So there's a whole list: the bicycle center, the shooting center, the velodrome, and that's a range. The velodrome is pretty much up to speed. The shooting center pretty much up to speed. Archery is just like a field.
Right. And honestly, some of those will be, hey, the games are in 7 years still. You're going to need some refurbishment just as part of the usual wear and tear on the thing. So yeah. Okay. Brisbane.
Very quick report from Salt Lake City 2032. We have organizing committee leadership. Fraser Bullock is going to be the executive chair and president. Very involved, obviously, with the campaign to get it to Salt Lake City, as were Brad Wilson and Steve Starks. They are going to be the vice chairs. Brad Wilson was the former speaker of the Utah House of Reps, which I thought was fun. And Starks is a former president of the Utah Jazz. Hey, did you know the Russians were doping with TMZ?
Oh, my
cross-country skier and para-biathlete Nikolai Polikin from 2014 had his case heard and his ban upheld. So there's going to be some reallocations from individual events. losing his silver for the men's 7.5 kilometer visually impaired biathlon, the silver from the 12.5, and then the gold from the men's 15 kilometer biathlon visually impaired. The gold in the mixed cross country relay has not been changed. They're leaving that because he was only one of the team.
I wonder if did they say anything like they may strip his medal, but the team result stays intact?
They did not.
Okay.
That was not part of this announcement. It may have been buried in older things because this was an appeal that was not heard. So was same drug as Camilla.
I was going to say it was part of the appeal that Grandpa was taking the medicine and it was on a cutting board?
No, because his case was he swapped his samples. Maybe he swapped them with Grandpa. So he was... Welcome to TKFLASTAN.
It is the time of the show, and thanks for sticking around with us this long. But we had to do a deep dive on Kirsty. We had to. She's going to be a big deal for the next 8 years, so we had to get to know her. But it is the time of the show where we check in with our team, keep the flame alive. These are the athletes and guests of the show. These are the guests of the show and listeners that make up our citizenship of our very own country, TKFLASTAN. A lot of cool stuff going on this week.
At the Dundeens 50, Evan Dunphy broke the world record for the men's 35-kilometer racetrack.
Chloe Kim won her third snowboard halfpipe world title and clinched a spot on her third Olympic team. Chloe, we will see you in Milan-Cortina.
And after 15 years with Team Novo Nordisk, track cyclist Mandy Marquardt will be racing with Edge Cycling based out of the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania.
Congratulations to Derek Long, who taught us about curling stones. He has successfully defended his PhD thesis.
That's Dr. Long to you.
That's right. That's right.
And congratulations also to John Cushing and Michael Wiedock from Anything But Footy, who were awarded the Sports Journalists Association Award for audio live event coverage for their work on TalkSport at Paris 2024. The U.S. Fencing Coaches Association named its NCAA Fencing All-Americans, and the list includes TKFLASTANi's Madga Skarbankowicz and Hadley Hussisian, first team, and Lauren Scruggs, second team.
And that is going to do it for this very long episode. To let us know what you think of the new IOC president and what we can expect over the next 8 years.
We do love hearing from you. You can chat with us and other listeners on our Facebook group, Keep the Flame Alive Podcast. Email us at flamealivepod@gmail.com. And the voicemail and text line is always open at 208-352-6348. That's 208-FLAME-IT. And if you need more Olympics and Paralympics in your life, and who doesn't, sign up for our newsletter at flamealivepod.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes.
And next week, we will be going back to Sydney for another look at the 2000 Olympics and Paralympics. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, keep the flame alive.